You've seen the Fallen Order trailer, but what was shown behind closed doors? Stay tuned to find out. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is the brand new action game from Titanfall developer Respawn. Louise got to see an extended gameplay demo at EA Play, and here's what she thought. So Louise, we've all seen the 13-minute trailer, but you got to see some stuff behind closed doors that we didn't. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I was at EA Play today, and they've got this sort of sneaky extra bit of Star Wars. And so basically I saw the sort of 10 or 12 minutes before you actually reach the section that was shown as part of the conference. So what we saw here was we saw Cal Kestis. When the demo started, he's in water. He's got that adorable little droid with him, BD1, who's kind of on his shoulder. And the first thing, and I think you probably find this as well, it looks ridiculously pretty. That was the first thing. It was all this incredible water. It was in the middle of, there was AT-AT, or are they AT-ATs? What's your official term, Matt?
Weirdly, I think it's AT-ATs for the ones with 4 legs and AT-STs for the ones with 2.
Well, these had 4 legs, so imagine something a bit like Shadow of the Colossus, but with AT-ATs. So Cal then sort of clambers up one particular walker and is jumping from sort of the moving legs to moving legs, so it feels really, really cinematic, and it felt it. You know, even just watching it, and it was a Respawn Entertainment, someone that was actually playing it in front of us rather than just one of those smooth demos. So it was really interesting to see the sort of movement and jumping between. Then Cal jumped inside, took down some stormtroopers, very similarly to the way that you actually see in the trailer that you actually saw. But it's just more of that, using those incredible lightsaber, moves. It's that sort of light and heavy attack. And it does seem, I don't know if you thought this as well, but it feels like the enemies are genuinely threatening. Even, before we got to I think it's a purge trooper, even your standard enemies, they are damaging, they can kill you, and I think they've done something quite interesting with the fact that while you can be a super Jedi and you have these superpowers, you have this force, that can stop time and stop things and push people in front of their own bullets, which is quite cool, there's still this element of survival and constantly dodging and constantly moving to try and balance out the light and dark side. It still feels difficult. Well, that's definitely what I thought. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, same. I think the vibe that was really interesting from the trailer is obviously like you're a Jedi and you're amazingly powerful and you can kill a lot of the stormtroopers with one hit. But when they start adding different varieties, like the ones with flamethrowers,
yes.
and when they start ganging up on you as well, then suddenly it becomes a slightly different prospect. And the bit where you're fighting stormtroopers and the purge trooper, becomes a completely different type of challenge, which is nice because you get to have that, like you said, a moment of feeling like an amazing Jedi, and you're taking everyone out in front of you and you're killing them all in really sort of interesting ways. But then you are sort of in danger as well. And weirdly, you sort of said Shadow of Colossus, and obviously some of the traversal feels a little bit, I guess, Uncharted or Tomb Raidery. The vibe that I was getting against the Purge Troopers is really Sekiro, because it was all sort of parrying and sort of blocking, and you've almost got like one-hit kills with a lot of the standard combat. So sort of building up that sort of ebb and flow of the combat and then taking them out at the end reminded me of Sekiro, weirdly. But that's a great combat model to hit if you're going to steal from anything. Not that they've stolen it, obviously, but it works. It looks like it really will work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. I think the bit I saw actually felt a little less linear. So obviously it is quite a linear game. It is a single player game, but you can use BD1 as a sort of tool to help you find things to do. So he can scan technology. I'm saying it can scan technology, and you can actually use it to find and sort of solve puzzles. I think we already saw in the 13 minutes him using the overcharge ability, which is literally just sort of plugging in, overcharging things and then making things move. But actually in the section I saw, you found this sort of workbench which had components on it, and BD1 was you then upgraded BD1 with those components to give him that overcharge ability. So you're going to be constantly upgrading this little droid to get those additional powers. What was also interesting was, and I think it was in the demo as well, they were showing off the fact that you were unlocking skill points, but they were very reticent to actually show what you would spend them on.
Right.
But just the fact that BD1 is upgradable. I also saw a bit where you use him on a zip line, so you just literally swing him over your head and use him as a zip line down. So he's very multifunctional. You know, he can definitely be used in multiple ways. And the other big thing that I saw in this particular demo is you actually have dialogue choices. I don't think that was in. I don't think that was in the shorter demo. So yeah, it was cool. The Saw Gerrera, you were talking to the freedom fighters that you're teaming up with to try and save the Wookiees, and he sort of leaves you in this surrounded by ships, and you end up speaking to two people on a ship. You can choose exactly what you say to them, and then what was also interesting was you went into a ship and there were these holographic planets in there. Now you then flicked through them as if that you could maybe choose where to go next. So the dev didn't actually sort of go into any of them, but he did sort of show off this menu where you could pick to go into planets. So this choice thing, you know, just even choosing whether you say a nice thing or a nasty one. So whether you're not going to affect the story in any way, because it's going to have its own sort of linear story that way, but even feeling like you have a little bit more input. And I think that's one thing as well, that these areas might seem linear to sort of get from A to B, but entirely how you take down the enemies within will be entirely, I think, up to us. You know, I think there was some really cool points where you were shoving droids into sort of piles of stormtroopers and sending them going up like Skittles. I think there's going to be really interesting things that we can actually do in each area to make it feel like you are being your own Jedi.
I presume that's maybe why they kind of were a little bit cagey about showing the skills as well, because, you know, it's a Star Wars game and you have Jedi powers, so you're going to have light and dark side. So presumably as well, like you say, with upgrading the droid, you're probably going to be able to sort of skew your skills in one way or the other, which again will probably make a difference in terms of how you traverse each world. And the fact that you can go to different planets is really cool as well. I didn't realise that, because that's sort of like strong Knights of the Old Republic vibes of getting to choose which different sort of Star Wars location you hit, which is absolutely sort of, you know, it's exactly what you want as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, well, that was what was suggested. That's what I'm kind of assuming from that. They didn't actually take us to a different planet.
So, Louise, the other thing that struck me watching the shortened trailer was like, and it's an obvious thing to say about a trailer, but it was really Star Warsy in terms of like the audio design, dynamic music, sound effects, things like that. Did you get that vibe as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, certainly. What was funny was once he'd climbed inside the walker, once you actually went into the sort of the pilot section, what he did was he knocks the two stormtroopers' heads together using a distraction technique. So BD1 goes in and distracts, and then he literally knocks their heads together, which is almost this kind of slapstick Star Warsy type comedy, which was cool. Like it's not being afraid to sometimes do the ridiculous, but also make sure that you're constantly in Star Wars. And what was also interesting was while the dev was clearly controlling this, you know, the AT-AT as it was going along, you still had this angle which was behind his head, so you felt quite close into it, and it still looked like the movie. And what I've heard, and I've not actually seen it, is they've actually got the Star Wars wipes in there. They've actually, despite the fact that it's a game, which actually made it really, really difficult, because that's not something that developers ever really have to think about. Because obviously, if you were doing a wipe across the screen, you do have two images, one after the other in film, but in games you need to create them both, so that's interesting as well. But I mean, the structure, the way the music was going, the every sound, every blaster sound, every bleep and bloop of a droid really sounds so Star Wars, and it fits. And I think it's exactly what what DICE did with Star Wars as well. Is it's all about those sounds, it's all about bringing you into that world. Because, the story's fresh, the story's new, but you need to feel like it's your genuine Star Wars. And certainly with the score and things, Fallen Order's really, really getting that.
Awesome. So final question, as ever. When's it out, Louise?
It is out on November 15th, so we don't actually have that long to wait, which means we'll be playing a lot of Star Wars this Christmas.
Stay tuned to the channel for more videos from E3 2019 and subscribe now for more news and analysis right from the show floor. And if you are already subscribed, please don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when our next video lands.